Well, you may have seen the protests and the insane images that are coming out of LA. And what is happening, people are protesting ICE raids that started on Friday and they have not let up. So what started as small protests have quickly exploded into full-blown chaos. But what's important to think about isn't so much the protests and what's happening, but what the security state plans to do as a result of them. Okay, so what sparked these protests? ICE launched a wave of large-scale raids across LA, targeting mostly Latino neighborhoods and hitting places like Home Depot and a bunch of clothing warehouses in the Fashion District in downtown LA. This started on Friday, and on just the first day, they arrested 44 undocumented immigrants. By the end of the weekend, that number had jumped to 118. But on Friday, one of the people the police took into custody was David Huerta, a major labor union leader in California. Let me actually grab an image of this guy for you so you can actually see who we're talking about, because his arrest really is what lit the match here. So this is David Huerta. He is, like I said, a major labor union leader in California, and his arrest sparked these protests. Now, he's a U.S. citizen. His grandparents came here from Mexico to work the fields. His dad was a Teamster. He spent decades fighting for workers and immigration rights. So why was he arrested? People want to know, right? Well, according to federal authorities, it wasn't about immigration status. They're claiming Huerta interfered with federal agents during one of the raids, that he blocked a federal vehicle while agents were executing a judicial warrant. He's now facing charges for impeding a federal officer, and he's sitting in the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown LA waiting for arraignment. His arrest was the match that lit the fire. So here's how it's played out since. The ICE raids started early in the morning on Friday, June 6th. Protests broke out almost immediately, especially downtown in the Fashion District. Tensions rose really fast. Police responded with tear gas, pepper spray, flashbangs to break up the crowds. Then came the property damage. Protesters smashed windows, they slashed tires, they spray painted anti-ICE messages on Waymo self-driving cars, some of which were later torched. Police cruisers were pelted with rocks and even electric scooters. A cop car was set on fire on the 101 freeway, which got completely blocked off. By Saturday, the protests spread fast to other neighborhoods like Paramount and Compton, which are both south of downtown. These were fueled by rumors that more ICE raids were coming. Things got more intense. Protesters threw rocks and Molotov cocktails. They set up barricades. They lit trash bins on fire. Police fired back with rubber bullets and smoke bombs. People on both sides got hurt. Several officers were hit with projectiles, and multiple journalists were pelted with rubber bullets by the police. Even one needed surgery after being struck. Downtown, businesses took a serious beating. Storefronts were smashed, looted, and covered in graffiti. Fires were set all over. The scene was out of control. So that night, President Trump ordered 2,000 National Guard troops into LA, completely ignoring objections from California Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass. And you know what? I agree with them. Yeah. The president has every right to secure the border. That's his job. But using military force against U.S. citizens in American cities without the governor's consent, think about that. The president just bypassed local leadership and dropped troops into an American city. That's not law and order. That's federal overreach on steroids. Now, maybe you agree with it now when it's done to crazy liberal LA by President Trump, but are you going to agree with it when it's President AOC sending in the troops to quell unrest in Texas or Idaho? I didn't think so. This crosses a dangerous line. We spoke out when Democrats wanted to send troops after January 6th, and now we have to hold that same line here. Just because the target is different doesn't mean the principle changes. Okay, so by Sunday, the National Guard did roll in. They took positions at key spots like the Metropolitan Detention Center and federal buildings. But if the goal was to calm things down, it didn't work at all. The protests kept going, and more clashes, more destruction. We actually saw most of the cop cars set on fire after the National Guard troops showed up. So what was the point of even sending them in? Vandalism continued throughout the city, even with National Guard troops there. So it really just kind of inflamed tensions more than anything. And now here we are. As of right now, the protests are still happening, and the deeper story here isn't just about the immigration raids. It's about how quickly our government reaches for military force to quell protests, how freedom gets pushed aside when the people in power decide it's justified, and even scarier, how easily it is to convince the populace that surveillance and control tactics are for our own safety. Now, I want to show you a variety of things that have triggered this response, this emotional response from people to say, yes, 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 give me more surveillance and control and march in the military. I want my freedoms restricted. They see this. They've seen images. Now, this is weird, right? You've got all of these people in LA waving Mexican flags or some, looks like Argentinian flags there. There's various different Latin American flags being waved. And it's odd because these protesters are protesting not being deported, meaning, or not having other people deported, meaning they want to remain in America. So you would think the logical thing to do would be to wave American flags around and to be like, hey, we love America, we're American, and we want to be in America. But instead, they were waving around mostly Mexican flags and flags of various different Latin American countries. And this triggered on social media various people saying this is proof of an invasion. This is an insurrection. Liberals have allowed this invasion in. How have we allowed this to happen? Look, they're burning American flags, they're burning American property, and they're waving around foreign flags. And yeah, the optics on this are awful. One should ask the question, was there something behind the passing out of these flags? Where did people get these flags and suddenly start waving them around in a protest? I don't have an American flag or any other flag, to be honest with you, hanging around my house like this to show up at a protest with. So where did these flags come from? I think that's a question all of us should be asking. Were they provided these flags? Who provided them these flags? Was it so that it could be staged as, hey, look at this invasion, we have to do something about it? And what is that something we're going to do about it? Oh, we're going to rip away your freedoms as we surveil you, as we monitor you, as we do a bunch of different tactics in the name of public safety, right? So people are seeing these and they're getting pretty upset. I want to mention Senator Scott Weiner. He tweeted out, Vance calls the LA protests an invasion. 4 minutes later, Stephen Miller he's referring to, calls it an insurrection. 29 minutes later, Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, threatens to send in Marines. It's like clockwork. They've chomped at the bit for months for a pretext to declare martial law under pretext of insurrection/invasion. And he shows these tweets. Here's J.D. Vance's tweet. One of the main technical issues in the immigration judicial battles is whether Biden's border crisis counted as an invasion. So now we have foreign nationals with no legal right to be in the country waving foreign flags and assaulting law enforcement. If only we had a good word for that. Okay. Stephen Miller saying insurrection. And Hegseth saying, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, the violent mob assaults on ICE and federal law enforcement are designed to prevent the removal of criminal illegal aliens from our soil, a dangerous invasion facilitated by criminal cartels, aka foreign terrorist organizations, and a huge national security risk. Under President Trump, violence and destruction against federal agents and federal facilities will not be tolerated. It's common sense. The Department of Defense is mobilizing the National Guard immediately to support federal law enforcement in Los Angeles, and if violence continues, active duty Marines at Camp Pendleton will also be mobilized. They are on high alert. Wow. Okay. Now, look, you might agree. You might agree with this because you might be looking at all of these Mexican flags being waved and all of these illegal immigrants that are in the country that Biden allowed to flood in. And we know that there was a border problem. We know that Trump clamped down on that border problem. And you might be thinking of all that and thinking, yeah, but Kim, this is an actual problem. This is an actual invasion. This is an actual insurrection. And maybe you're right. You might be right on that. But you have to stop and think, now look, Trump already curbed the border issue. We've already got that taken care of. They're now going to go and they're deporting people. And especially if they go after the violent criminals, I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with that. But what are they doing with these protests to rip rights away from you and me? That's what now you and I need to be worried about. Because now we've got the border under control. We know the government's cracking down on the illegal immigration. Yes, these protests are popping up. But what are they doing with these protests? Because that's the real concern. Because I don't think this is really about the ICE protests. I think we've seen other protests that have been going on for the last year and a half. The protests against Israel, against the genocide in Gaza. And that's what they really want to crack down on. And not only that, that's not the only one they want to crack down on. You've got the establishment wanting to crack down on Protests against COVID lockdowns. The government wants to crack down on protests against election meddling. They want to crack down on any protest that questions their authority and goes against what they're telling us we must do. And that's not left or right. That's just the establishment. That's what the establishment, want us to do. The control mechanisms they want on us. These protests for them are a dream come true because they know you'll agree with the crackdown on this protest. This is how they get you to agree. You'll agree with this because this is an insurrection. This is an invasion. You will agree with this. And when you agree with this, then everything's already in place, right? Everything's in place. And then then they're going to keep using it. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I've really liked lately, by the way, came out with this terrible take. 2,000 National Guard is not enough for the LA insurrection and Democrat-led war on America. The Democrats brought in over 30,000 National Guard troops after 3-hour, mostly peaceful protests at the Capitol on January 6th. They stayed for 5 months with nothing to do and slept on cement floors. Foreign nationals and communist anarchists have declared war on our government and are violently attacking, burning, and rioting in one of the largest cities in America. Send in more troops? Wait a minute, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You didn't even like this when they did this against J6ers. You complained about that. You bitched about that. And now suddenly, when it's something you like, when it's people that you don't like, then, in the name of that, you want to send in more troops and rip away more rights. Again, you might agree in this situation. You might say, but Kim, but this is different. This is different. It's always something different. That's what every side says when they want to actually march in or rip away, I should say, freedoms. They get you to agree with it. I got to show you this one here. Let me go full on this so you can really see it. This is from the Patriot Voice. If I wanted to get the public on board with the Planeteer police state nightmare, I would stage as many false flags as it takes to show you why my totalitarian AI surveillance technology is a good thing for public safety and how it quells terrorism. I'll start and facilitate many riots with illegal immigrants, bring in ICE, National Guard, and SWAT teams, deploying robot police dogs using Planeteer facial recognition tech to control the situation and show you why this is necessary to stop it. I would have the public at large eating out of my hand and begging for their own surveillance and enslavement in exchange for a safe world. I would convince you that this is normal and force you to accept it while monitoring your every move and eviscerating what's left of your civil liberties. Problem, reaction, solution. I couldn't agree more. And now here we are, right? Now we are marching this in, all in the name of public safety, right? The government is building out a surveillance state so advanced, so invasive that it would make the East German Stasi jealous. They're using drones now, facial recognition, AI-powered social media monitoring, all of it originally rolled out, by the way, in 2020. Only now it's more powerful and less accountable than ever. They're tracking where you go, who you're with, what posts, what you post on social media. They're pulling your license plate data. They're scooping up your cell tower information. They're scraping your digital footprint. But let's be real. Do you think that data is only going to be used for immigration enforcement? Of course not. Once they have it, they'll use it however they want. That's how this works. And right now, they're getting you on board with this type of crackdown against people you don't like, illegal immigrants and liberals in LA who are trying to keep the illegals invading our country. But they're going to be using this against people who protest against Israel, against the genocide in Gaza, against election interference, and anything and everything that challenges the establishment narrative. They get us on board when it's something we agree with and use it against us when it's us speaking out. That's why this is so dangerous, and none of us at all should be okay with this. We've seen this playbook before. When people in power feel threatened, they reach for force. They slap labels on dissent, they call it chaos, and they justify sweeping crackdowns in the name of order. But it's not just this moment. It's about the precedent it sets. If we accept this now, if we let them normalize the idea that protests equals terrorism, that military force belongs in our streets, and that surveillance is safety, then we're not just losing control of the border, we're losing control of our freedoms. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. We do live stream it every day. It's a 1-hour show. You can catch it. It is totally free. Just go to KimIversonShow.com. See you there.